Okay, so I want to go over a little bit on some of the things I've been doing to play around with the center one-way pulley in the Yokomo YZ10. So quite some time ago, a little over a year ago, I think, I made a video talking about how you can take this pulley and kind of modify it to accept an SC10 4x4 clicker unit so that you can modulate how much one-way action you get on this center pulley. The problem that I ran into with that clicker unit was that it kept snapping off because you basically needed a dummy pulley that would stay still on the lay shaft. So you put a one-way bearing into that that rotates in the opposite direction, and then you have the other part of the clicker that's basically glued or epoxied to this pulley, and no matter what I used, super glue or epoxy or whatever, it would always snap off because that glue could not handle the torque that part would see under braking or under a braking event. So the next thing I tried doing was to take the bearings out of this pulley. The pulley itself has one-way bearings on the inside, and then on either side of the housing there are just conventional 4x8mm bearings. I tried replacing those with one-way bearings in the opposite direction to the one-way bearings on the inside. So that way the pulley would be locked in both rotational directions. The problem there was that the one-way bearing that you would mount on this side, because it wouldn't really fit on the other side, it was too deep or too thick. So you can only put it on this side, and it couldn't handle the braking torque, and the bearing would fall apart within one lap of driving the car on the track. So really the trick here is to find something that can handle the actual torque that the drivetrain sees when you apply brakes. And that's been the most challenging part of this. So basically what I settled on doing was not necessarily locking down the center pulley, but slowing down the center one-way action significantly. And what I settled on was to use bushings. So again, the center pulley, I have one right here, it has a 4x8mm bearing on this side and a 4x8 bearing on this side. And there are different part numbers for these center pulleys, but this particular one that I have, it's relatively easy to just pop out those 4x8 bearings and replace them with 4x8 bushings. So then the question is, do you replace these bearings with metal bushings or plastic bushings? So this particular pulley right here, I put metal bushings in each side, okay? And the one that's installed right now in my 93 Works has plastic bushings. The plastic bushings, the ones that I found are for the Traxxas Latrax. Those are the only ones that really showed up when I did a search. And these 4x8 metal bushings, the only ones that showed up were Kyosho metal bushings. I think they're vintage bushings. So each one has their advantages and drawbacks. So the thing with the plastic bushings is that they don't have the same tolerance as the metal bushings. So you can actually slot them into the housing on either side of this one-way pulley very easily. But that also means they fall out easily. So there's a lot of play between the bushing and the pulley. And if there's that much play, then the pulley itself will rotate actually rather freely, almost as if there were a bearing in there. So what you're really trying to accomplish with a plastic bushing is the malleability of that plastic. So on this, let me see if I can rotate this a little bit. So on the lay shaft, you have the pulley, and then there's this little clamp piece here that you apply to the lay shaft that holds the pulley in place, prevents it from sliding around. So really what you do is on the plastic bushing that's on this side of the housing, you take this clamp and you just press it as hard as you can against the one-way pulley. So that way it basically acts as a friction plate that pushes against the bushing that's inside this part of the housing here, and that will slow it down significantly. So that's what you're relying upon with the plastic bushing, the fact that you can really press against it with this metal clamp, and that will actually slow the whole one-way action down. With the metal bushing, because it fits much tighter. This actually is such a tight fit, I don't think I can ever get these bushings out, which is a problem if this pulley wears out. Is that okay? The tolerance is much tighter, so it should grind against the lay shaft more significantly than the plastic bushing, which has a lot of play. But then the problem is I have a metal bushing that would be rubbing against this metal clamp. And because of that metal on metal action, not only might I get more metal flakes, but I also might have less friction than if I used this clamp and press it against a plastic bushing. So I had to experiment with both just to see which one would end up being better in the end. It turns out that in the end, the plastic bushing is the better way to go, which is actually good news because they're easier to find and they're easier to replace because they fall in and out real easily. There's plenty of play in there. You're really just relying on friction between this clamp and the bushing that's on the inside of the housing there. So I did that, and I took it out for a few test runs. I posted a video of at least one video of this car running at my local racetrack with this setup here, and it makes it so much easier to apply more braking force later heading into a turn. So that way I can drive it harder before I approach a corner. I can brake later, and ultimately that helps your lap times. So this is really good to have on low grip surfaces. So there are some tracks that I race on, like at the Vintage Nationals, the track where they race on it now. It's a great track. They do a lot of really awesome layouts. But the problem that they have with their dirt is when they do a fresh layout, the dirt's kind of moist. And that means for the first maybe 2 weeks or so, the traction level is not very high. So if you're going to race a car like this at the Vintage Nationals, usually what they do is they do the layout right, maybe a week before the race. So the track surface is not going to be fully worn in. So you want a setup that's going to work on relatively low grip conditions. So this one-way pulley fix, so to speak, it should be really helpful. So I plan on running either this car or my 94 YZ10 at the Vintage Nationals with this setup on the center pulley. And hopefully I'll do way better this year than I did last year. Because last year I didn't have this fix. And because I did not have that fix, I had to, let off throttle much earlier. I had to brake much more softly heading into sharp turns. And that's a big problem using a one-way pulley on tracks that have hairpins or really sharp turns. The car just wants to swap ends. It doesn't like being stable under really hard braking from high speed. So hopefully this will help out. And of course, we'll see later in the year how this does at the Vintage Nationals. But anyway, I just wanted to go over this fix, if you want to call it that, or this little trick that you can play with your center pulley. Again, plastic bushings from the Traxxas Latrax. You can just do an eBay search for 4x8 bushing, or you can search for Traxxas Latrax bushing set or whatever. Just a whole bunch of plastic bushings. It's kind of a waste of money because that bag comes with the whole bushing set. But within that whole bag, there's only 2 4x8 bushings, but that's all you need. And the bag is pretty cheap, so you can just get as many of them as you need or as you want. So, yeah, that's it for this trick. And try it out on yours if you happen to use your YZ10 as a runner. And, let me know how it turns out. So, thanks for watching.